Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, good morning, wherever you are in the world right now. My name is Crickett Rumley, and I am the Senior Director of the New York Film Academy's Film Festival Department. I'm so excited to welcome you today and two of our alumni, Lucía Flórez and Chémi Pérez, and we're going to be back in just a moment to talk to you about their road to Sundance. But first, let's watch this video.
¿Podría un niño de 11 años pescar un bagre gigante de casi 2 metros? Cuando escuché esto por primera vez, no lo podía creer. Fue como hace 6 años cuando un fotógrafo amigo mío me comentó sobre esta práctica en el Yurubá, en el Amazonas peruano. Y para ese entonces yo pensé que ya lo había visto y escuchado todo alrededor de esa zona, habiendo trabajado ahí por 10 años. Pero él me juró que esto era diferente, que era una práctica única. Mi curiosidad se encendió. Fue así como nació Shirampari. Shirampari significa hijo en ayénica, y este documental cuenta la historia de cómo Arlindo, un líder ayénica, le enseña a Ricky a pescar un bagre gigante por primera vez usando solo un gancho, en su comunidad Dulce y Gloria. Dulce y Gloria se encuentra muy lejos y apartada. Para llegar ahí desde Lima hay que tomar un avión a Pucallpa de 1 hora y media, para luego tomar una avioneta hasta Puerto Obrego y luego navegar río arriba por 5 horas para después caminar media hora más. Es como viajar de Lima a Los Ángeles pero sin siquiera salir del país. Si bien este documental toca temas importantes como la conservación o la preservación de conocimiento tradicional, también busca resonar con experiencias humanas básicas como es la relación padre-hijo o la importancia del legado. ¿Logrará Ricky la hazaña de pescar un pez que lo iguale en su tamaño? Para conocer el desenlace te invito a ver Shirampari y compartir esta historia y la lucha de defensores ambientales.
All right, I hope you enjoyed that. So now I'd like to bring onto the platform Lucía Flórez, the director of the film, and Chémi Pérez, the producer. Hello. Hello. Tell us where you are right now.
Hi, how are you? Thanks, Cricket, for creating this space, and thank you for everyone for joining. I'm in Lima, Peru at the moment, in my house. Yes.
Wonderful. And Chémi, where are you?
Hi, everyone. I'm in Murcia, in my hometown right now. And I'm super thankful to be here back in NYFA after all this time.
Yes.
Thank you. So excited that y'all are here. So speaking of NYFA, why don't you tell us first how you met and how you got involved with this project?
I can start, and you can complement whatever you want, Chémi. So both of us Fulbright scholars, and we did our masters at NYFA. I did the documentary conservatory first in New York, and then the second year I moved to LA. And that's where I met Chémi, who was doing his MFA in filmmaking. And we connected immediately, I guess, because we share the same visions of the world. We created a friendship right away. And we started even living together at the end of that year. I was scratching in his couch for like 3 months. Thank you so much.
Well, you're still talking.
Yeah.
It worked out. Yes. Yes.
And among those like nights that we were like talking about our dreams and projects, we started creating ideas of films that we wanted to make. I have a background working in the Amazon, so I told him about like all my trips to the Amazon, and I guess I planted like a seed inside of you, right?
Definitely. We started working together in our next films because all those ideas that Chia was telling to my husband and I were itching in our hearts, and we thought that she has an amazing perspective and an incredible experience working for more than 10 years in the Amazon and all across Peru with communities and preserving natural spaces. So we were super thrilled to join on board, and Yeah, Shirampari was actually our second project that we were preparing together, that we were developing. The first one getting the funding to get made.
And how did you find that project, that idea, that story? How did it come to you?
Yeah. Well, it all started like more than 6 years ago. I mean, I have been telling this story for a year, so I'm assuming like 7 years ago. When the DP of the film, Diego Pérez, who's also my business partner of the production company that we have here in Peru, went to Urua, which is the area where the film takes place. And he was taking pictures for another assignment, but he saw this man coming out of the river with this giant catfish, and he was like so curious on how he catch this catfish. And the man told him that they have this traditional practice where they dive into the water and hook the catfish that migrates from the Atlantic, and that's the way that they cut it. And the waters are so cloudy that like it's very hard to understand how a human being can do that. So he was obsessed with the idea year after year. But we didn't have the funding to go there and take, like, he initially wanted to take pictures, like underwater pictures of this event, but it's really far away, as you could see in the video. We didn't have the funds to go there, and you can just go to the area in this small window of time when the river kind of comes down, and these ponds are formed where the catfishes kind of rest there, and it's easier to catch them, right? So yeah, many years after I did my master's at NYFA, and I came back to Peru, and we saw this opportunity to apply to a National Geographic Society grant that was called at that time Heritage and the Natural World. So it was like, okay, it's perfect for this practice that we want to portray, but it was a subject, like it was a topic, this practice. So we started crafting it as a story, kind of reaching back to the people that he knew in the area, the rangers, the park rangers, the indigenous leaders, and everyone started pointing of Ricky, one of the characters of the film. And we started having Zoom calls with him because it was the pandemic. We were locked in our houses, and he told us that he had this 11-year-old boy that was about to learn the practice. So I was like, okay, that's the story. Don't teach him yet. We're gonna try to make this happen next year, right? And I immediately called Chémi. At that point, he was doing his like practices in LA still. I was already in Peru, and I was like, okay, we have this idea. Do you want to be the producer? And I think that you were like running in between like classes or gigs, but really busy at the moment. Do you remember?
Yeah. And I thought we would never get the grant. I was like, yeah, just
sure.
The project. We'll work on this together, but this will probably become a reality in 3-4 years.
Way in the future. But you shot it in August 2021.
Yeah.
And you completed it by March 2022. And that's when you started the festival submissions.
Mm-hmm.
And let's start talking about that, because there have been phases in this process. Now, before you say anything, I want to say to our audience, we all know how this story ends. The film got into Sundance, but there is a road and there is a path and there is a story worth hearing. And that's why we're here today. And in about 30 minutes or so, we'll start taking your questions. But right now, we're going to focus on this path. So let's start with the first phase, those initial submissions. What were your goals and expectations in March 2022?
I mean, as anyone who comes from college or from a master's, you want your film to be in festivals just to connect with people, to network, but also to expand your possibilities for your next films, for your next movies. So of course, you want your film to hit a big film festival, and that's why we started focusing first in tier 1 and tier 2 film festivals. And more than earning any money from the movie, which from a short is quite difficult, we wanted it to go to places, to travel, and to also tell this reality of Arlindo and his son and his community all over the world, so they can see that there are places where environmental defenders are still working hard to preserve their heritage. So yeah, I mean, it all starts at the budgeting of the project, because we did save part of the budget for film festival submissions and for film festival run, in case we got selected to attend some of those film festivals. And then when we started thinking about the strategy, we thought that the film was worth it. We were talking to different distributors that wouldn't understand the film at its fullest, or didn't want to give the love to the film that we thought that it deserved. And we started aiming high at the beginning, and discussing with you, Crickett, and with the Film Festival Lab about the materials that we were creating, all the poster, the trailer, all the materials that we were preparing for film festivals before we even got selected for the first film festival, which was back in June 2022. Yeah.
And that was a festival in your country, in your region, right?
Yeah, we had several film festivals in mind that we thought that would be great for a world premiere, but they didn't work. I mean, all the big festivals started saying no. We had a hard journey at the beginning that made us grow a thick skin and start accepting rejections, because it was a big train of rejections at the beginning.
It was, yeah, embracing rejections. Yeah, we have like this chat of like, well, mainly us two and the DP, and it was like, okay, in Peru you say chote, which is like slang for rejection. It was like, okay, another chote, and it was like we were collecting rejections, and it was like, okay, maybe we're just gonna like book a theater and like do our own premiere there. We were like thinking about that at one point, because we still had the commitment with the community and the film and the funders to like put it out somewhere, but like, yeah, we
thought that maybe if we didn't get any of these big festivals, at least we had to premiere in the biggest short film festival in Peru, in Lima, and it got rejected from that one too. And then we were like, okay, you know what, whatever, let's just premiere in whichever festival comes first. And it was a film festival from my region, that has a very interesting gaze, like a very particular programming, and the programmer is a woman with a lot of experience and a good eye, and she picked us up without even knowing that I was from this region. She was surprised when I was like, hey, I can attend in person. so yeah, it was the first.
It was perfect for you to be in Murcia in Spain, in your region. I want to go back to something though, and I think you just very eloquently addressed a lot of the challenges that filmmakers face, and part of that is you've made a film that is so meaningful to you, and you put your hearts into it. You've raised money for it. That's what short and indie filmmakers are doing, right? Like, we're not just making this because we have tons of money lying around. Usually, you had to travel a very significant distance in order to make the film multiple times. There's a lot that went on here, right?
Just as a side note, sorry, Chémi had to leave his life in LA to make this film. Like, him and his husband. It was like, okay, you're coming to the Amazon. And he was like, oh.
From LA to the Amazons, that is a very big commute. Very big. But you had put so much into this. You did have a budget for festivals, and that I think is very important. You had a budget, you were planning ahead there, and you were doing research, making choices of festivals that you felt aligned with the film, and still getting a lot of rejections.
Mm-hmm.
Still getting a lot of rejections. What kind of changed I love that you had a chat, by the way, where you were just like, let's just collect the rejections. What changed the course for you? When did you start getting more acceptances? What were the changes that you made in the strategy?
I think that at some point, and it was like around when we got into Doc Leipzig in Germany, where we started to go like more like niche festivals. In Doc Leipzig, which is like a very big festival in Europe, we were selected, but for the kids section. And it was like, okay, do you want to take it or not? And we said like, yeah, our film has a kid as a character, but we didn't see our film as a kid's documentary. But it was interesting that they did. So it was, okay, we're going to take the opportunity and go. And we went to the festival there, and it has like a big industry. We sat down with distributors, producers, and we met a lot of people. And I think that around that time, like things started to shift. What do you think, Chémi?
Yeah, I think it was because at the beginning we were more focused on big film festivals because they also have a longer turnout. Like you submit to them and then you have to wait for 6-7 months before you hear anything from them. And then by April, May, we started thinking that we had to open the strategy. We talked to Crickett about this as well, and we thought that diversifying the strategy and trying to reach all those niche film festivals was something important, since the big festivals weren't paying attention to the film. And I think they weren't paying special attention to the film, and especially in Europe. Because it's a different type of film. It's a film that deals with environmental issues, with Aboriginal cultures, and it tends to be put in the Nat Geo box, and don't think of it as a film that is good for film festivals or for more of an art house cinema circuit. Right. Which then it proved that it had a conversation, and it can still be in those places despite being a film about Aboriginal cultures and about environmental issues. But yeah, I think that was when things started to change, and then it was a surprise for us that still some of those big film festivals that were in the line that hadn't had a notification by that point started saying that yes. The first one was Doc NYC. We went there back in November last year, and then it came Sundance. And once you start getting in festivals, especially shorts, because they don't have these premiere requirements as often, you start getting more selections because other programmers watch your film because it's had impact in the press or social media, and it starts gaining some sort of importance. So I think that's when everything started changing.
And what's really interesting too is that your film had so many niche possibilities. Chia from Peru, Chémi from Spain, the environment and sustainability aspect, the outdoor aspect, the fact that it's a documentary. And then I was very happy to hear that it started getting into children's film festivals, because that was a surprise to me several years ago when I learned that actually U.S. children's festivals love to program films with subtitles because they're hoping to raise up an educated cinema audience of young people. So that you were in several children's festivals, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's worked better in some than in others. We as Chia said, we never thought that this was a film for kids because it's very gory at the end, and it contains a little bit of violence. But I think kids are underestimated a lot, especially when it comes to content and to films that are made for them, because they tend to be infantilized, and kids are clever. Kids can actually understand a complex story. And the subtitles, of course, is something that is challenging, especially for for smaller kids, but in Germany they had a direct translation system in Dog Leipzig that worked out really well, and we had a screening that was full of kids, like school kids in the morning, like a weekday there in Germany, and it was full with kids, and they really enjoyed the film and had.
And it was
awesome
literally one of
reactions.
my favorite screenings.
Yeah.
I mean, the kids, there was a Q&A with the kids, and they asked so many like, so you went to the Amazon? And it's like, yeah, I went to the Amazon. I'm so excited.
And then the film has worked great in other film festivals for kids, or when included in some parallel sessions. For example, in Sundance, we had another like an additional screening at the Park City High School that was really great. We had almost an hour and a half to talk about the film and to have a very intense Q&A with the kids there. They even wrote notes that when we return to the community in the Amazon, we will bring for them to exchange what they think about the film and about their culture. And even in other film festivals like Big Sky, they have created like educational materials to go along with the film for community screenings with indigenous communities, but from the US, to reflect on cultural heritage through our film. So I think it's that is something that we didn't have in mind, and now we are considering for our next feature film that also has a child as a main character and a big fish as an additional character.
I think you need to change the title of your production company to Child and Big Fish. I think that something that's very meaningful is screening your film in front of different types of audiences. And the tier 1 festivals and the tier 2 festivals, the really big, well-known festivals that are Oscar qualifying, are going to have very different audiences than a children's festival or an environmental festival. And this type of strategy works not just for documentaries, it also works for short films, in short narrative films, in terms of figuring out what your strategy, your niche should be. And I also think a really important point is that Sundance does not require world premieres for short films. And
not even US premiere.
They don't even require US premiere. I don't think they have any premiere status requirement. And
probably Utah or something like that, but they weren't picky about it.
Okay, everyone run to Film Freeway. But yeah, and I think that's really important for filmmakers to know, because I think that there's a myth out there that short filmmakers need to premiere their film at Sundance, and people are submitting works in progress. They're submitting at the midnight deadline the night before and spending a lot of money when the film needs another pass. And I think that an important message I would like to deliver is you can pump the brakes on that and let your film start submitting your film when it's ready to be submitted. And you will have better results across the board. And also I want to talk about statistics before we get back to Doc Leipzig. Chémi, Chia, do you know how many film festivals you've submitted to?
Chémi knows.
Chémi knows? What's the number and how many rejections?
A lot. I mean, as Chia said, we stopped counting rejections and just throwing them in that bin, making jokes about the rejection notes because they're always so similar and so plain. But right now, we are not distributing the film ourselves anymore. It won an award for film distribution this last year in a film festival in the Canary Islands, where I currently live, and now a distribution company is dealing with that. But before they joined us, we had submitted to almost 300 film festivals, and yeah, we had spent, especially at the beginning, when we paid a lot of fees, we had spent $1,700 in film festival submissions, which was something that we had budgeted in advance and we had saved for film festival submissions. And about rejections, well, we've been selected in a little less than 90 festivals, I believe. So yeah, we are still waiting to hear from some of those, but about 200 rejections, more or less, should be the number.
Oh my goodness. So I think a couple of things I would love to highlight here are, one is you do need a budget for this, right? Like, I love it if a filmmaker with a short film has between $1,500 and $2,000. And in the US, that can get you between 30 and maybe 60 submissions. And if you're, and I also think that of the 300, Chémi, some of those are festivals, I believe, that you've submitted to Sundance, possibly with a waiver fee. Is that true?
After Doc NYC and after Sundance, we started receiving more waivers, although we were asking for them since the beginning. And as we were doing the research about their programming and their perspective, because we of course took a lot of time on doing that research. We were taking advantage and sending emails and asking for waivers, but they didn't start really coming until we hit Doc Leipzig and then Doc NYC. Yeah.
And Doc
Actually,
NYC.
after Sundance, like, I personally started receiving 5 emails a week
Yeah.
of like different film festivals, like, hey, I want your film, or I want a screener. And like after that, I mean, they started coming to us instead of us to them.
Yeah, and we haven't paid a single submission since Sundance. Like, right before Sundance, we were still paying submission fees, and after the festival, we started receiving so many interest notes that we didn't have to pay anymore. But yeah,
that I think is something that people don't always realize. And I will say, I mean, being in Sundance, Doc Leipzig, and Doc NYC, you're getting a lot of high value offers. And I do caution filmmakers, whenever you get an offer, make sure you do your deep research on the festivals, because there are also some scams that are out there trying to get people to submit.
Yeah, especially when you get your film in festivals, because they see your email there and they start sending you crazy things, and you have to read the small letters at the contracts and at the submission platforms, because sometimes there are things that are really crazy, like, yeah, just for participating, your film will be online forever in our webpage, and some things like that you have to
That's not a great idea. That's not a great idea. For the record, just going to throw this out there. So last year, Sundance received 10,981 short submissions. That's 10,981. They programmed 64. So we're looking at about less than 5.05% of films. I think I got that right. Encounters in the United Kingdom is a BAFTA and Oscar qualifying festival. They told me today that this year's festival, they received 4,700 shorts. They're programming 100. So that's a 2% acceptance rate. Just this last week or so, San Sebastian International Film Festival's NEST program, which is a student program, they had room for 13 films, to program 13 films. 421 were submitted. So that's about a 3% acceptance rate. So just throwing it out there that part of the challenge that short filmmakers are really facing is the sheer number of short films that are being submitted. And so if you're going towards the niches, then you're more likely to get an acceptances at some point. If you're going towards niches, you're doing great research and you have a good strategy and you have time to wait it out, the tide can turn. So I hope that is somewhat inspiring. Hey, can we talk a little bit more about Doc Leipzig? Because you guys met a lot of people there, and tell us a little bit about what that scene was like and how it changed things for you.
You want to start, Chia, or?
I question because like my output sound changed, but talk about Doc Leipzig.
Yeah.
And some of the people, the film industry and film festival professionals that you met there.
Well, we met a bunch of fellow directors. We hanged out with people from Chile that had like a delegation, and they were much more organized than Peru, so that was like inspiring. We had conversations with production companies from Germany. Yeah, it was very interesting, and it was like our first like joint experience of coming as a team too. I think that is important, like having like a producer and a director showing up for a film and sitting down in like these meetings. I think it's much easier for us, and it gives like a coherence aspect also to the meetings.
Yeah, we weren't thinking of Doc Leipzig as such a big industry hub. We thought it was more like a film festival specialized in documentary with a hint of animation, and we were ready to connect with fellow filmmakers, but we didn't know that the industry zone was so big and so interconnected, because it's not a huge film festival. So basically everyone is there and you can get to talk to a lot of people. And that was the good thing that gave us at least the opportunity to start experimenting how to navigate a film festival, how to navigate those meetings, how to start pitching your next film, and how to use your previous films also as a tool to start promoting your next work. So it was really great, and I'm glad that this first film festival come before other bigger film festivals, because it allowed us to also, stretch out and start feeling how was the reality of such a film festival. And
I think that's a really important point.
At the beginning, like
say that again. I'm sorry.
We weren't prepared at the beginning. We hadn't like studied the whole industry section very well. So once we set our feet there and we were like, oh my God, this is real. Then we started like sending hundreds of emails, inviting people to the screenings. And we realized that part of attending a film festival, but not only as an artist, which is cool and really great to show your movie and talk about it, but also with that in mind, with that business perspective in mind of making contacts, talking to people that might be useful in the long run, and inviting them to your film. Don't be afraid of talking to people, of promoting your film, of bringing cards to exchange and to give to people when they ask about your film. To do all that work is really important, especially when you're coming on your own to a film festival and you don't have a press or a PR agent by your side that can guide you through the film festival.
The thing is, like, everyone's there to meet people. So like, even if at the beginning you're shy and you're like, oh, I know that's a programmer from X festival, we should talk to them. I mean, you should go and reach out to them like in the proper way and proper time, right? Like, people are always like having meetings and are busy, but like, people are there to meet other people. And like, as you get accepted to more festivals, like, you also become kind of like a commodity, like as a new up and coming filmmaker. So like, people do want to meet you too. So like, I would say that don't be afraid to reach out and be like, hey, I just got like my film in Doc NYC, in Sundance, like I have this project going on, because people do want to hear those new stories from new directors and want to be the first that like grab them in a way.
Exactly.
And it's important to start losing that fear of interconnecting and networking and showing your work and talking about it, because then you realize that it's just a bunch of people that go from one festival to the other, and especially in the major film festival circuit. I just came from Locarno last week, and in those film festivals, you see the same faces, and if they see you around, it's also a good way to reconnect and to be like, hey, is there any chance that I saw you at Sundance and that, and yeah, it's important that they see that you're still in the ground and making films, and that's
And
the
you're
way to
moving
prove
forward.
it.
Yeah.
And in that sense, like, you should not only budget for entry fees, but for travels. Because like, if you do get in a big festival, I think that you should go because it's not the same, like, to be there in person and meet important people face to face, to just like have your film representing you.
Right.
And also study the opportunities from your countries, because in the US there is not like a specific fund where you can apply to get funding for attending film festivals, but in Peru and in Spain, there are programs from the government that basically want to promote filmmakers and their films abroad, and they help you with those costs. But in order to get them, you need to prepare and you need to do the paperwork, which is crazy. And we didn't know anything about it, she and I, nor our team. And we started giving I don't know how to say that, but crashing our head against walls because we couldn't get the funding to go to those film festivals. But at least we had some budgeted to attend the bigger ones, and that's why we could be in person at Doc NYC, Doc Leipzig, and Sundance. Sadly, we couldn't make it to Palm Springs, where the film festival were selected, Shirampari as well. But what we realized, that if we had done that work of registering the film, qualifying it with in national institutions, getting all the co-production deals properly made, and all of that, we could have at least gotten that extra funding to attend the additional film festivals that we couldn't attend.
I do think that attending festivals is so important, both artistically in terms of interacting with your audience and having to answer questions and hear different perspectives about your film, but the networking. If you're interested in career longevity, it is about going to the festival, not just for your screening, but for enough time to kind of settle in. Compare it to a destination wedding where you're going, you know, there's a reason to go, but there's going to be time that you have to fill and people to hang out with. And that's where some of the real magic will happen. So I've got a couple more questions, and then we're going to turn it over to our audience questions. But you know, at Doc Leipzig, you met a couple of people and had important conversations with a couple of programmers, one from Cannes and one from Sundance. Can you tell us about those conversations, or as much as you're able to?
Yeah, we had submitted to Cannes and Sundance before attending Doc Leipzig, and in this phase of inviting people to the screening, we started crossing words with film festival programmers from all over the world. Some of them attended the screening and talked to us in person. Some others couldn't attend in person, but still replied the emails. And we found out that they were interested in the film, and actually some of them had watched it. And we actually had the opportunity to ask them, okay, it didn't work for your festivals, but where do you think it could fit? Like,
I want to make this point. They were in this space where they could talk to programmers who had rejected the film.
And sometimes you think that they haven't even watched the film, because of course they receive so many submissions every year. But for example, in the case of Cannes, the film festival programmer, who was really nice and discussed with me about the film, said that he had watched the film twice, that he had liked it, but he couldn't find a spot to program it. So you actually can get that hint of, okay, where could it work if it didn't fit in your film festival, and you can only ask that when you have already applied and you get to meet them, of course, but they are there. I mean, they are people and they are willing to answer and to talk about their work because they are people that normally really love what they do.
Exactly, exactly. Well, and I also love when you first told me that story about meeting the programmer from Cannes, you were excited to hear that he had watched it and that twice, not once, twice, could have a conversation with you about the film, and also to get that you got that knowledge of he liked the film, but it didn't work for Cannes. And maybe it didn't work for Cannes that year. Maybe it didn't work for them because for all sorts of different reasons, but it's not a personal thing necessarily. Programmers often love films that they cannot program. And I think it's in those cases that they really want to help you find other festivals to get into.
Yeah. And that is when your work, doing your research, really comes to light, because if you have done it and you understand their programming interests and their views and perspectives, and also how do they program, because sometimes it's not only by length or by topic, it's also related to different like themes that they program around in film festivals. Then you can discuss about that too, not only ask them about your film, but about the array of films that they did program and that you think they could have a conversation with your film.
And you also met a Sundance programmer at Doc Leipzig.
Yes. And at the beginning, we thought that maybe she was the one that had called the attention from Sundance towards our film. But then talking with the head of programming in Sundance, they told us that they actually get to watch every single short that is submitted through Film Freeway, and that they watched ours through Film Freeway first, because we had submitted before attending Doc Leipzig. But still, her input was really interesting to us, and we had the opportunity to discuss the film briefly. So it was a great conversation too.
Love that. All right, we're going to go over to the audience questions, and just give me one moment. Just a second. When you looked at niche festivals, what did you look for at those festivals to submit?
I think that we started like breaking down our film. What intersectionalities does it represent? So like I'm a woman filmmaker from Peru. Also, it's an indigenous film. It's in a native language. So there's like film festivals that only take like native languages, for example. Environmental film, documentaries, more experimental because our film is like verite. So those kinds of things, and then breaking it down like, okay, which women in film festivals are we going to apply, which indigenous, which environmentals, and so on.
But yeah, in the end, what we also wanted were film festivals that at least had an opportunity for the film to be discussed, to also have like industry hubs, even if they weren't specifically filmmaking industry hubs, maybe hubs related to environmental issues or to nature conservancy, Aboriginal cultures. So yes, films that had film festivals that offer to their programming some love, and not only film festivals that program a bunch of films and put them online for a couple of weeks and that's all.
I think also if you're trying to strategize, ask someone to help you. You know your film so well that you may need someone else to say, well, what about this type of audience? What about that type of audience? Because you're basically looking at who you are as a filmmaker, what the film is about, but also think about audience. That's what festivals have to think about, is who is our audience? What are they looking for? how can we provide that? So we have a question. I am submitting a feature film to Sundance in 2 weeks. So a lot of this, as you know, is more shorts oriented, but these questions are really relevant to everyone. One, when were you notified you got in? Two, once you got accepted, what steps did you take to prep for the festival? Posters, teaser trailer, PR rep. And three, any other helpful tips for submitting and once accepted, how to best prepare? I think that's a really critical question because I know there was a lot of work. You had already done a lot of work, but then there was more. So tell us about that.
Well, we got notified in December and the film festival was in January. So you don't get much time to prep. I am sure this is completely different for feature films than for shorts. For feature films, it's critical, the world premiere status and then the regional status. But for short films, as we said, it's changing a little bit. And thank God, because we short filmmakers need that. And once you get accepted, there are several meetings that you can attend before the film festival that help you navigate a bit. There were a couple of Zoom sessions for film producers. And when you attend a big film festival as Sundance, it's good in case you have the opportunity to team up with a PR specialist to help you put together your materials and also start doing some press and giving interviews, trying to reach out locally but also internationally, and start also navigating that attendees list or that press list that you receive from the film festivals that seems that is not important, but it really is. Like you really need to pay attention to who is attending the film festival, who is going to be in person there, who can you contact with, who is interested in the same topics that you are exploring, and of course try to catch them during the film festival because they usually have very busy schedules. But for us, since we didn't have a huge budget, or we didn't even have the institutional support from our countries, it was important to ask for help to people that had at least a knowledge about big film festivals. And we reached out to a PR agent that is a friend of us. He couldn't help us in person in the festival, but gave us some hints. And we also received tremendous help from NYFA because they helped us with their all their publicity network, and also helping us preparing the press kit and the press note, the press release for Sundance. And that was super helpful because we didn't have the funds for hiring a professional PR agent.
One thing that is interesting about Sundance is that they also give you a PR liaison, like a contact person that is there to like work with you. Like it's different than other festivals, like where you feel like you're kind of on your own. Like when you get accepted to Sundance, like they even word it differently. Like, we're glad that we're gonna be working with you. And they give you interviews, like they give you spaces to have those interviews. Like they're kind of on your side. So like you feel supported from like different like fronts from them. And I think that also helped us a lot.
Yeah, and those liaison are not just volunteers that are working for the festival. They are people that also have watched your film, understand your vision, and they are really there to help you elevate the meaning of the film. So they were super helpful. And I have to say that Sundance was a great festival for us because they treated us as artists first and gave us the space. In some other big film festivals, you don't have the same opportunity because their programming is way too big, or because they don't pay as much attention to shorts than to feature filmmakers. But in Sundance, we really felt welcomed and that our film.
Sundance, like big festivals, is well financed. And so they will have people who do jobs that at smaller festivals, a quarter of a person is doing that job. And I just want to say to our audience, that doesn't lessen the value of the other festivals. It's just, we have to sort of change our expectations for smaller festivals, I think. And so we have a couple of really interesting questions about PR, which I think you've kind of already answered. But what are your public relations and marketing recommendations for rising filmmakers interested in gaining appeal and interest for their films? And if I can, I'm going to take that for just a second. For short films, there is not much interest in the media until something big happens, like Sundance, or the film is Oscar qualified or Oscar nominated. So I think that's part of it. And maybe Chémi and Chia, can you tell us more about your conversations with public relations and marketing people outside of Sundance? Did they feel like there was a lot of options and opportunities for PR for the film?
We were surprised, for example, that our film was selected among the 10 shorts, 10 must-see shorts from IndieWire. I mean, we didn't send our film to IndieWire or anything like that, but there are certain outlets that take interest in the short film selections and watch them beforehand and write about them. And it's true that there was not a huge interest from other outlets or any platforms globally, but then locally in your networks, there are great opportunities and there are many things to explore, because especially if you come from a smaller community, even in the US, if you come from another state and you come from a smaller city, people are always interested in filmmakers and artists from their areas that are showing their films abroad. So we focused on that. We focus on Spanish outlets and regional outlets related to our production company and Peruvian outlets that might be interested in Chia's journey and in the film per se. And especially when it hit Sundance, we got a lot of press coverage, especially from Peru, from all the major networks that were talking about the film and writing about it.
Yeah, there was this small like web diary, like journal, yeah, that came to Sundance from Peru, that came because of our film to Sundance.
Wow.
So that's like, yeah, it's not a thing that happens every year that a Peruvian film shows in Sundance. I think we're the 4th or 5th project that ever shows in Sundance from Peru. So like it's something to take advantage to, like local newspapers, media that want to cover that story.
Yeah, and also a great opportunity as well to prep the festival, talking to people that had actually attended the festival before you. We reached out to people from Peru and from Spain that had been in Sundance before. There is a director that won Best Short in 2019, and I called him on the phone and be like, hey, how did you prepare for this massive film festival? And they are always really glad to give you inputs on their experience and what they would have done better and all of that. So there is opportunity there in the
but the thing also, like as you said, like it's so massive that like you are gonna miss out on things. Like you cannot be everywhere at the same time. Like there's like a meeting at the same time that there's like a screening that you want to attend, and there's like a Q&A, and that there's like a party. So like you have to just like be content with what you can like attend to, and try to have a good time too. Like I think it's not something that happens like probably like a couple of times in your lifetime. I don't know. So like try to be present also in the moment. Like I think that's key.
I think the other thing, I just want to say this about Sundance. It is like 8,000 feet above sea level. So if you've never been that high in the mountains, which I realize like Chia from Peru has been in much higher mountains than 8,000 feet. She was like, what? That was nothing. But it's also physically exerting because there's not as much oxygen in the air, and you're trying to figure out where to go, how to get from one place to the other.
Have like 5 feet of snow in the streets.
Yeah, so
Exactly.
cool. And you sleep like 4 hours a night. So like you're like tired trying to like perform this like ability kind of yeah, it's crazy.
Oh my gosh. So I want to, I understand that we've had a lot of questions around budget, and they have been summarized for me as, should the $1,500 to $2,000 festival budget include travel, or should we have a separate travel budget? How much should your budget really range to when trying to get to Sundance or any film festival? Yeah, so let's start with that. So travel and submissions budget.
I think, of
Yeah.
course, depends on your film, the scope, and where do you want to take it, or the amount of film festivals that you want to submit to, right? We did a big scope because we had the money for it and we had saved it in advance. But with 1,500, I think that would cover mainly submissions, and then attending the film festivals would take additional funding because especially big festivals are very expensive. All the accommodation opportunities get full in advance, and they tend to be super expensive. Especially Sundance, that happens in like a ski resort in a very remote place, where everything is very expensive, even having a drink out or whatever. Luckily, they have a lot of cocktails where you can eat for free.
A lot of things are free. You're a filmmaker,
Yeah.
like you get fed and like drunk for free.
That
But
doesn't mean that you should.
or something like yeah. But it's the reality. But how much do you think that we spend in travels, like our experience?
From our budget, it took about $6,000 between submissions and attending those film festivals. And yes, we attended the key film festivals that we thought that were interesting for our networking opportunities, for connecting with local industries as well. So we went to 2 film festivals in Peru in person. We went to 2 film festivals in Spain in person, and then we attended Doc Leipzig, Doc NYC, Sundance, yeah, and
Las Palmas de Gran Canaria.
yeah, Las Palmas in Spain, yeah, and Santiago Wild in Chile. But
Wild, yeah.
Yeah, you also had a lab there.
Yeah, right.
So there is something to be said about when you are doing your festival strategy to be very clear about where you have your people, right? Like, where are you from? Where does your best friend live? Where does your aunt live? Like, one of the things that festivals love to hear is that you can bring an audience if you got into the festival. And so you can shrink the entire planet by just figuring out where you have your audience, where your friends and family are, and then target those areas. And then when you get into the festival, you have a couch to sleep on, hopefully, and that can reduce your expenses as well.
We have slept on couches along the way a lot. Yeah.
There are a lot of couches to be slept on. So let's see what else. We have so many questions, y'all, and I'm sorry we're not going to get to everything, but there has been a question: what % of budget was spent by camera and audio mixing, and what type did you use? What type of cameras, what type of audio did you use?
We used C70, Canon C70 with like EF lenses that we already had. Audio, it was just like an H6, I think, and Sennheiser boom shotgun. And
we also had this underwater microphones
and
underwater
ears. It wasn't like fancy gear. It was, I think, that the adequate to make a documentary also like in those conditions, because like I mean, we were very remote. We had to like budget like to buy gas to charge the batteries, like so like every extra kind of piece of gear was like very thought, because like shooting in the Amazon is complicated. But yeah, those were the gears that we used. And for sound mixing, and what was the other question? Like, how much did we spend?
And did you have to get permits to shoot in the Amazon?
Yeah, especially
Not
because we were shooting right after COVID, and Peru was just opening after the pandemic, so it was a complicated moment. You don't have to get the permits like legally, but you need to talk to the institutions. You need to know who to talk to get to very remote areas. And we also were in touch with local authorities, testing a lot for COVID before attending. So yeah, it was a great deal. And as Chia said, we were a very small team because of that, and because the luggage was charged by the gram in especially in the planes that we were taking to get to the area. So we were a very small crew. We were 5 people, and the material was just what was intended to be used, and we didn't have any like scuba diving gear or additional lighting gear that we could take to the area, because it was going to be very difficult to manage with when taking it to the community.
Yeah. And just to complement on the permit side, like in that context, like the permit is asking also permission for in the indigenous communities to shoot there, right? So like we made sure to have like a communal meeting before we started shooting with every single person in the community, explaining what we were doing, like what our goal was, and have those respects.
Yeah, and we had many meetings with them before as well via Zoom, because thanks to the pandemic, they got an internet connection in the community via satellite, and we could it was not like a communitary process, but we did some communitary approaches to make this film together and to explore what they wanted to tell through the story as well.
I'm going to shift gears, and earlier, Chémi, you said that you had a distributor after Sundance, or at some point after that, you got a distributor. And one of the questions is it important to get a distributor for the film early on or before submitting, or can you form your own strategy and just use Film Freeway? And I think there are a couple of parts of this question. And one is there is a different definition for distributor in Europe versus the United States. So can we let's talk about that first.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not against film distributors, because I think they do an amazing work, and they have an insight in the market that is crucial for any film. Mm-hmm. But in the short film festival circuit, it's true that it's complicated to get prizes, awards, or just an economic outcome out of the films that get in the circuit, because basically you don't take your film to theaters and charge for tickets, and then the opportunities for distributing your film to platforms and TVs is reduced. So film distributors don't charge according to the benefits of the film, but at least in Europe and in Latin America, they tend to charge a flat fee to take your film in consideration for film festivals, and they normally charge you a flat fee for their services, and then they charge a fee depending on the submissions that they have created for you. In our case, we didn't find anybody that could understand the potential of the film at the beginning. And the distributors that we were talking to thought of niche film festivals since the very beginning and wanted to apply just to indigenous film festivals or environmental film festivals. And we thought that they weren't a good match because they weren't really understanding what we wanted to take out of the film festival run with this film. And that's why we started doing the work, which for a new filmmaker or a student, I think it's really clever because you can actually get to understand this world a little bit better and take that opportunity to read about the film festival programming and talk to people that have been to those film festivals and start gaining that knowledge that then even if you don't become a distributor yourself, it's gonna be helpful in the long run. So I wouldn't advise to not to hire a distributor if you can, and if you have a relationship built up with a distributor that knows your film and knows what you want to take from your film festival run, then great. I mean, it's amazing because they're also gonna lift a heavy weight of your shoulders because it's a lot of time that you need to put into research and into submissions and to then the turnout, sending all the materials, responding to all the questions, all the emails. Especially if your film gets into a bunch of film festivals, it can get a bit hectic.
It's a job
that you have to answer and all the fires that you have to put off. So yeah, if you have the opportunity to work with a distributor or even with a sales agent, that for shorts there are people that work in that field too. It's amazing. It wasn't our case, and we found our distributors later in the process when the film was almost a year running in film festivals. They watched the film and they really liked it, but we didn't have any additional funding for hiring them. And that was when we attended Las Palmas Film Festival, which is a quite important film festival in Spain and with a very interesting programming that was key for us because it happened in our island where we live in the Canary Islands. And one of the prizes that the short won, it won 2 awards, but this distribution award basically covered the fee of the distributor, and they kept doing the film festival run for an additional year that will finish probably January next year. So yeah, for us it was a good match, but it came later in the process.
And I think it's really important to know that this type of distributor does not really exist in the US. This is more of a Latin American concept or a European concept.
Yes.
So if you are Latin American or European, you should definitely look into some of those. And I have to say, as the director of the film festival department, I am a firm believer that the type of research and strategy that you did yourselves will serve you the rest of your careers. I think that you learned so much in the process that, like, if your next film, if you want to go get a distributor, fine, but that you're building on the knowledge that you gained along the way. So I have a question here, a couple of questions that I would love for Chia to start with. When you were getting all those rejections, was there a moment when you thought of just giving up? And if yes, what made you go on?
Yes, of course. There's a moment where you like doubt your own film, right? Is it really good enough, or is it just that I'm attached to this story and this process, but no one else sees it? It's very frustrating. Yeah, as we were saying, I was thinking about just like renting a theater and having our premiere there, and then just putting it online. I was like getting in all this like discourse of like film festivals being like too capitalistic, not my thing. It's not for like the kind of film that I want to make. But I think that it, in a way, Chémi kept me going too, right? Like, because he was like, no, like, let's wait. I know that we can get like somewhere, like at least small ones, like let's try this one. And that's what like kept me going. Like at one point I was thinking about putting like limits too, like of budget and time. So it was like, okay, we're gonna spend just like this amount of money and this time. If something happens here, great. If not, like let's roll with plan B, right? But I think that that's healthy in a way too, because like
Totally.
in some, I mean, this time it worked out. It doesn't mean that next time it's gonna work out, or like, because it's almost like a lottery getting into Sundance, right? Like the chances are so small that like not all your films are gonna get into Sundance or like a big festival. So I think that putting like a healthy limit to the amount of time and money that you want to spend on it is a good advice, right? And try to do the best that you can with that. And if not, like you are gonna learn a lot from it for your next project and move on.
Yeah. In our team, everyone was really willing to screen the film as soon as possible. And it's true that it was important also to curb the enthusiasm a little bit, because of course you want your film out there, but you need time for film festivals to watch your film and program it. So my recommendation would be to train that skill of patience and yeah, if you have done your work and have done your research, probably it's gonna find a good place for screening, for premiering, and for sharing the film and all its potential. But it's true that it's a frustrating process, and we thought many times that we should just put it online and move on. But when you really believe in your film and in what you're making, you have to understand that your film also has to be in the correct places for your career to move forward as well.
Right.
And I'm in love with Shirampari, with this film. I think it's a great short, because not only because we made it, of course, but because I believe in the story, and I believe in how we made it, in the connection that we have with the community that was made with, and the important values that it talks about. So for me, the most frustrating part was not the time that it was taking, but that it was going to end up in just a website or a YouTube page and be watched by a bunch of people and just that, no? So I really believe that we needed to keep forward, and it's true that it's important to have those limits and those borders that normally are marked by the budget. You cannot just keep going forever. But you need at least to try. And if you want to make a serious move in your career and actually dedicate your life to make films, you have to take opportunity that your shorts give to you, and take the most out of their film festival run, because it's virtually the only place where they're gonna be seen by an audience, and that's the important thing. Also, Chia at some point was like, okay, we've been to Sundance, we've been to a bunch of festivals, that's it, no? And I was like, no, let's keep it rolling, because this is the only way that you can get people to watch your film and to share this experience, and also to build up towards your next movie.
Yeah. I think that it's important to have that balance in your team too, right? Someone that has like different kind of skills or like traits or like personalities, right? Like, because I think that both Diego, the DP, and me are very like pragmatic and like we want things like done and done. But like Chémi has like this kind of more patience and like long-term vision. So I think it was a good match.
Yeah.
Also, just the balance. Yes, I think one of the things that I'm hearing a lot is team, the notion of team. Like, you did not do this alone. You did it together. You had each other to support, for the support. And also, I think it's really important, the notion of patience. We live in a society now where we expect many things to happen very quickly. And I think that, yes, this is a skill that we need to grow, because it's not just going to be with this film going to festivals. If you're serious about a career in the film industry, it's going to be about every single thing that you do, except that one time when things just magically all fall into place, and then you pray for that. every month. So I am so excited we've been able to do this, and I unfortunately need to wrap this up. I'm going to ask you a question and then give you a minute to think about it. Okay. So one of the questions was, what was the best and most interesting part of the film festival journey for you? So that's the question. And while you're thinking, to everyone who's attended today, I'm really excited that you are here. I wish you great luck. Please diversify those strategies, submit to more than Sundance. I really recommend that everyone actually fundraise for the festival run from the beginning. A lot of times filmmakers only fundraise to get the film in the can or through post-production. But if you really want the film out there, you're going to need the submission fees and everything. And yeah, so good luck. Don't believe the myth that you have to have a Sundance premiere with a short. That's not true. All right, my friends, what do you have for us? Let's start with Chia. What was your favorite part of the journey?
I think it has to be Sundance. It's every filmmaker's dream, right? Like I literally verbalized it like 5 years ago, even before doing my master's. I remember like a good friend of mine told me like, what's your goal? And it was like to make a documentary that goes to Sundance. Like it was that like tangible. So I would say like, I don't know, in one of like those like shorts party that we attended, and it was like, oh wow, we're here. And like the image of like Shirampari and Ricky was like on the big screen, like among so many like directors, and it's like, I can't believe that we're here. Or like the premiere day, that it was like this huge like 600 people theater, and like our film was the first of like the documentary short sections to start, and like the screen was so big, and like I remember like holding Chémi's hand, and it's like we were crying, like we couldn't believe that we were there. Oh yeah, it was a dream.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, of course. And I don't know, I could say that all the impressions that we receive from people after watching the film are something that's what really I think keeps us making films, because that's the only real interaction that you get after showing your work. So I think that pays off and keeps you going. But for me, one of the most special moments, of course, after Sundance, was the big premiere, the first premiere that we had here in Spain. Chia couldn't attend because it was also communicated in like a week before the film festival was going to happen. But I happened to be in my hometown, and I could attend. And just showing the film to a theater full of people that you know, and having the opportunity to show what have you been working in for so many months and years. And especially my husband and I, we had been abroad for several years. We haven't lived in our home countries, in our hometowns for 13 years. And it was a great opportunity to come back and show to our families what do we do, what do we do for a living. And that was really awesome to see their faces revisiting our adventure in the Amazon, taking that little part of the Amazon somewhere else.
I think that is such a beautiful statement to end with. We were watching our friends and family in a movie theater in your part of the world, watching a film, not sending them the link to watch on their own, on their devices, but in a theater. That's just magical.
You need the cinematic experience for that.
Yes.
Well, Chémi and Chia, thank you so much. Thank you to the NYFA tech team. Thank you to all of you who have joined us today and asked questions. I hope we got to them. And if we didn't, I'm very sorry. Again, my name is Crickett Rumley. I'm the Senior Director of NYFA's Film Festival Department, and I'm so excited that Chia Flórez and Chémi Pérez were able to join us today. Good luck, you guys. Wish you all the best.
Anytime. Thank you.
Much for having us.
Thank you,
Bye-bye.
Joseph.